Today on Locked On Red Wings, Michael Brandsegg-Nygard is assigned to the Grand Rapids Griffins. We'll explain why that had to happen, as well as previewing a long road trip to the West Coast.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. That includes YouTube, Spotify, Apple, so on and so forth. Scotty, we're going to finish today's episode talking about the road trip that kicks off with St. Louis, seeing the team that the Red Wings just made a massive comeback against on Tuesday. But we want to lead off the show talking about what was the big news on Monday, which was Michael Brandsegg-Nygard getting reassigned, I guess I should say assigned, to the Grand Rapids Griffins, which is pretty big news, but I don't think it's surprising news. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. So we'll start that episode talking about that and any potential recalls that could come along with that. So before we get to that, I got to let you guys know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, Scotty, as I just noted, Michael Brandsegg-Nygard on Monday was reassigned to the Grand Rapids Griffins of the AHL, a move that wasn't shocking to most Red Wings fans. Ourselves, as well as many other of the podcasts in Metro Detroit, kind of noted his limited ice time on the game on Saturday, his limited shift count, and the fact that the offensive production just kind of hasn't been coming easy for him. And it felt like the writing was on the wall because between giving a 20-year-old 8 minutes a night and 20 minutes a night in Grand Rapids, I think the decision is pretty easy on what you should do with that player.
Yeah. And this is honestly very similar to the conversations we've been having with Danielson for the better part of a year, which is like, he probably could stay on the roster, and he probably is one of the 13 best forwards in the entire organization. However, when it comes to development, I think it just makes far more sense to give him a lot of minutes down in the AHL than 6 minutes in the NHL. I think that's just kind of common sense. And on top of it, there's still room to grow. It's not like you watched him and you're like, oh my goodness, how could they ever have come to this conclusion, right? Like there's room to grow. We talked about it yesterday, right? Like there's just there is a slight, I don't know if disconnect is too dramatic of a word, but he's just still adjusting to the speed of the NHL game. It is such a fast league and such a fast game in today's NHL. And I think that that's just the biggest thing that he's got to work through. And he can do that for 24 minutes a night down in Grand Rapids, over in Grand Rapids. And then once that adjustment is a little bit more connected and there's a little bit more of a clear, polished and finished product, then he'll be back, and he'll be back in a middle six role, I'm sure, almost immediately when he does return.
Right, and the thing, too, about MBN is he was not a train wreck with the Red Wings in his 9-game stint.
No, exactly.
In the 9-game stint he played, he actually had very solid defensive numbers. His defensive, and he was playing on a line that was used as a matchup line. You put him out there in difficult deployments to try, and it's still not more difficult than what Larkin's line was receiving, but second most difficult deployments out of the forward lines. You put him out there with Kopp, Comfer, you say, grind this team down. It was a good line at doing that. But the problem is that line did not finish, and MBN was part of that. And that's where what you were saying comes into play. It's that the pace and the speed. The foot speed for the NHL, and we saw that through those 9 games, that just wasn't quite there yet. Now, that being said, and we already both mentioned like the obvious benefit to playing bigger minutes in the AHL, like being sent down to Grand Rapids if you're Michael Brandsegg-Nygard is not a punishment. Obviously, I'm sure he's disappointed that he got sent down because he started with the big club. but he's a 20-year-old rookie. This is part of the development. And it's just better served for him to go down there. It's not a punishment. And I think this is more addressing the fans. And I think most fans understand this, but just because he got reassigned does not mean that the script is finished on him. He just wasn't quite ready. But he's already showed you also a ton of upside. For him to be as close as he is in his D+2 year is incredibly exciting. And it's not entirely ruled out that we've seen the end of him this season too. But it is also notable, Scotty, that they did send him down after his 9th game, which means he is still eligible for an entry-level contract slide this season. If he does not play another game in a Red Wings uniform this year, he could have his contract slid to start next year instead. So that is an important anecdote to note. But I do think, as we've already proven to start this season, if he is ready to play, he will play. We've seen that with Emmett Finney and Axel Sandin-Pellikka, and I think NBN is the same. So while he was sent down with entry-level slides still available, that I don't think that that's going to prohibit him from coming back up if he's ready later on in the season.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. And I think, I don't think the Red Wings' intent was like, let's just get as many games as we possibly can, out of him on the third line to start off the season, and then just completely, it's something where they maybe looked at it and went, okay, a decision, if it's going to be made, has to be made now. We don't want to wait and have him only play 10 games this year, because that would obviously be just kind of silly. But in the same breath, if he's crushing it down in Grand Rapids at any point this year, I would expect them to not hesitate to call him back up. I'd agree.
Yeah, and he had the 5th fewest expected goals against of any Detroit Red Wing in his 9 games. So again, the defensive impacts that he's had have been pretty good. He's first in expected goals against per 60 relative on the hockey team, which is with negative, which is a good thing for expected goals against to be in the negatives. You want that to be negative relative to your teammates, because it means that there's less goals against. One of those stats you want fewer, a smaller number.
Right.
So to be in the negative there is a good thing from MBN. Scotty, do you have, when it comes to MBN, right, we're having this conversation, they did not call anybody up, which was a little bit of a surprise because they're going on a 5-game road swing starting in St. Louis. That would be insane. I don't know where that came from. Brain not working well on that one. But they're starting in St. Louis and ending obviously in Vegas next week, going to the whole California gambit in the middle there. They didn't call anybody up. So currently with Kane hurt, and he's going to start, he's not going to St. Louis, but they hope that he joins at some point during the road trip. They only have 12 forwards. So are you expecting a recall to be announced later, or do you think that they're just going to go to St. Louis with 12 guys?
Honestly, so when the announcement first happened, I was of the belief that they're like, okay, they'll just wait until and not make the announcement until right before the game. I'm kind of shifting to they might just play. I don't know, man. Like they might just use 11 until Kane's healthy. Like maybe that's
you don't want at least, I don't know. That seems silly to me. I mean, it's possible.
I don't know. I still think the more likely scenario is someone is getting called up and traveling with the team, and they're just not going to announce it until Tuesday. But I don't know. It's because, do you call up Danielson? I don't think it's Danielson. I would love for it to be, but I don't think it is. I think that they're trying to, like, he just started playing games again a week ago. Like, I don't think that they're going to throw him into the fire that quickly. I guess they could go Carter Mazur, which I would love, and I think is probably overdue, and I think he's ready to be a bottom 6 forward in the NHL. So I'd have no qualms with that. Or they could go with one of the vets and just, call up Austin Watson until one of the kids is ready or something like that. But I don't know. Like they clearly show that they're not afraid to roll out 11 forwards in a game,
Yeah, but you don't want that to be I don't think
see.
you want that to be the standard though, right? Like you want to have, obviously
No,
if
but
you
it's
run
not
11.
like you're doing it until Kane's ready. That's not the standard.
Yeah, but they're not sure when Kane's ready. They say they hope that he joins on the California road trip. I mean, the California road trip's 5 games. So like 5 total games. Obviously there's a couple games outside of California. Like that's a lot of games to be running 11-7 or 12-6 if you have that 12th guy. I just don't think that it makes much sense to not carry an extra forward if you can. And if you're confident that Berggren and Soderblom can hold and Rasmussen can hold down the fort and won't deserve a healthy scratch for those games, well, then you still would want to call up one of those vets, right? Like they have the AHL Grand Rapids Griffins have a problem with too many vets anyways on the roster. So call up a Austin Watson or a John Leonard. I know you're trying to rationalize why they wouldn't. And I can make sense of it for one game. Like, that you have 12 healthy forwards going into St. Louis. So maybe you call Grand Rapids and say, hey, meet us in California. But it's just like, why wouldn't you just say, hey, drive to Detroit and we'll leave together? You know what I mean? With one of these guys.
Yeah. Also, meet me in St. Louis is a lot easier than meet me in LA too. Like,
right. It just to me doesn't make much sense to not call somebody up, and that's why I'm still kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, because as of right now, maybe by the time this episode drops, they have, but
maybe
as of right now, they still haven't, and I would really want to see Carter Mazur get called up. Or Nate Danielson, who's back healthy, but Nate Danielson might take a couple more rehab games.
I don't think it's Danielson.
And Mazur's perfectly suited for the kind of role that MBN was in.
Yeah.
I think bottom 6 grinder role. That's Mazur's calling card.
Right. I think it should be.
So, anyways, we'll head to a quick break. And when we return, we'll talk more about the road trip as a whole, as that is kind of big, a big road trip. I think that's fair to say, even though it's early yet, big early road trip. So stay tuned for that on segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. Let's be honest, most of us can't even name all of our financial accounts, let alone what they're worth. Between 401ks, savings, and investments, it's easy to lose track, and that can mean leaving money on the table. That's why I started using Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. It's going to help you organize your accounts, track spending, and get a better handle on your investments without having to touch a spreadsheet. You can review everything with your partner, see shared goals, and make better financial decisions together. Monarch's visual dashboards and smart tools make it easier to understand where the money's going and how to make it work for you. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarch.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarch.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. All right, Scotty, the Red Wings have a huge early road trip ahead of them right now, heading to St. Louis. And then from St. Louis, they're going to Los Angeles, Anaheim, San Jose, and Vegas. I think the question here for this conversation is just, what are you expecting from the Detroit Red Wings? What are you expecting the Detroit Red Wings to do on this 5-game road swing? And what are some of the storylines you're looking out for?
Yeah, well, I mean, if we're going to focus more so, I feel like on the 4 West Coast teams, that like St. Louis is obviously a part of this road trip, but is not quite in the same vein as like, oh, this is your West Coast, road trip. Like, but they're just like tagged on to the front because they're doing a home and home, obviously. But I think that there's honestly a couple, like all of these teams have at least something like to talk about so far this season, I guess. Like obviously LA, you have just the what do I want to say, roller coaster ride that the last like 3 years has been. Just like they obviously there's talent there. Just a matter of putting it all together. You have the Ducks, who have kind of continued to be train wreck, to put it nicely. But are locking up players long term and certainly have some young talent there. And then I mean, like the Sharks and the Knights like couldn't be more different in terms of like expectations going into the year. But the Sharks have Macklin and have fantastic young talent that they're trying to build around. And so like, I don't know, man, I hope they beat Vegas by 50. Like, I don't know. Like there's I guess, a handful of stories that you could really point to for each team. The biggest thing for me from the Wings perspective is really just, will they be able to, as we talked about literally in yesterday's show, in the last game recap, will they be able to consistently play their style of hockey against all these different caliber of opponents, right? You have LA and obviously you have Vegas. Then you have two teams that are more toward the bottom in the Sharks and in the Ducks. Is this going to be a road trip where you're just kind of like crossing your fingers and are okay with a split? Or is this a road trip where you can actually, maybe walk out of there with 6 out of 8 points and walk out of there feeling like you played your best hockey and your style, your brand that you're trying to emulate this year throughout the entire road trip. So yeah, I think that's really, I know it's super simple and like a captain obvious statement, but that's kind of how I feel going into these games. And then, yeah, I hope they beat the Knights so bad they don't want to play hockey anymore.
I think that you hit the nail on the head, right? Like with that storyline you're watching for the Red Wings, it's going to be how do they play on the road? Because so far when the Red Wings have played on the road is when they've played their worst hockey. The game in Toronto, they played terrible, and Cam Talbot stood on his head and was absolutely stellar through it. And they stole that win. In Buffalo and in the New York Islanders, they played terrible. And so the question becomes, do they play that way because Todd McLellan can't control matchups? Or do they play that way because they're not committed to playing their game? Because then they came home in St. Louis, and it didn't matter that Todd McLellan had control over the matchups. They were playing like crap. So like part of that would indicate to me is just like they got off their brand of hockey. And so this 5-game road swing is going to be a huge indicator to me of, can this team find success on the road? And if you want to be a playoff team, I would argue you have to find success on the road. I think the bare minimum that is acceptable on this road trip should be a 500 points percentage. So, I'm saying 2-2-1 is the bare minimum of what is acceptable, especially when you look at your opponents. Now, granted, on any given night, any team can beat anyone. And the Anaheim Ducks are off to a somewhat hot start for them. They're 4-3-1 right now.
They just still have negative defense and goaltending.
They're starting off over 500 in points percentage, 9 points throughout the first, 10 games, which is pretty good for them. The Sharks finally just got their first 2 wins in the last few days, so they're pretty bad. And, Vegas is very good. St. Louis may have a losing record, but they're still a playoff caliber team. And the Kings are middling right now, but still a playoff caliber team. So besides the Sharks...
Kings have a lot of talent, yeah.
Yeah. Besides the Sharks and the Ducks, there's not really easy teams in this road trip. But that doesn't mean you should automatically assign W's to the Ducks and the Sharks, because any given night. But if you do lose to them, you really better steal points from another one of those teams, right? And that's why for me, even while 2-2-1 is the bare minimum of what I'm expecting from a road trip like this, I would love to see 3-2. I would be ecstatic with 3-2. Like going on the road and winning the road trip, having a winning percentage on the road trip is huge. So that's kind of where I'm at. Like, obviously, 4-1 and 5-0 would be absolutely spectacular, but I'm trying not to get crazy here. This is still an inconsistent team trying to really ingrain in them the style of hockey that McLellan does. But if they are aspiring to be a playoff team, they gotta finish at 500 or above on the road trip. You can't settle for anything less than a 500 points percentage.
Sure, yeah, and like I don't have an issue with that take for starters. I'm, whatever you believe that the record should be or the point percentage should be or whatever. My biggest thing is just like, it's so early in the year still. I don't need like they must win this many games on the trip or else like
that's fair.
Whatever. Like I need to see with my eyes that they can play this like good competitive games and play the style that McLellan wants.
Right.
No matter who their opponent is, whether it's a tough team on the road on the West Coast or whether it's, the Sharks. Like I want some sort of confidence, regardless of win-loss record, that they will be able to emulate that throughout the course of the season. And it's not just, flip a coin every night and see which Red Wings team we're going to get.
Yeah, and if they finish 2-3 on the road trip, you won't hear me coming on here saying the season is over. I'll say they definitely, were below my expectations of what I thought this team could do, considering two of the teams that they're playing on this road trip are some amongst the weakest in the league.
Right.
But at the same time, it's not the end of the season. 5 games from now, there'll be 14 games in an 82-game season. So the season will be far from over. That point you bring up is very, very important to keep in mind. It's all right for me and other fans to set expectations of what they want this team to do on the road trip, but also keep in mind that if they do fail those expectations, the season is still in the first, we're not even 20 games in. And that 20-game marker, that Thanksgiving marker, American Thanksgiving marker, is the barometer that people use for okay, what is your team going to be? So it'll still be very early even after the 5-game road swing, but I just have expectations of what I want to see.
For sure. Yeah, and I think that's totally fair. When is American Christmas this year?
That's on December 25th, buddy. So I don't know about Canadian Christmas. But.
It's still my favorite. It's still one of my favorite accidental Brian moments on the show was, man, they're in a playoff spot in American Thanksgiving, whatever. And he's like, man, by American Christmas, what kind of record are they going to have?
Yeah, and that was completely genuine too. I wasn't trying to be funny. I
know. That's what made it even better. Yeah, that's Locked On Wings lore right there.
Yep. Just like your lemon tree, which we haven't gotten an update in a while.
Man, dude, my dad literally, I'm not even kidding you, he texted me the other day. He's like, for all your fans, and he sent a picture of his lemon tree. It's still going strong, man. It's still alive. I got to let him know that the people care and the people want an update on it.
That is a Nolan callback. That was a thing that he had.
It's 4 years
lemon
ago.
Lemon Tree Fridays or whatever it was. But that's why when we got a comment about it last week, I was like, wow, that's a true everyday there.
That's a true fan right there.
All right. Scotty, let's do a quick break. When we return, we'll pivot to just focusing on the Blues game as a whole, as that's the first game up on the 5-game road swing, not a 12-game road swing, like I said at the start. 5-game road swing. That'd be insane. Segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings coming up. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a bigger shot at a FanDuel payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making the late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. All right, Scotty, St. Louis Blues, team we just saw and just kind of crushed their hopes and dreams with a 6 on. Didn't crush analytically, but I have friends, we have colleagues, obviously, who are St. Louis Blues fans and hosts, and they were not in a good place after they blew that lead. Because remember, St. Louis had allowed 7 goals the game prior, so they were hoping for a bounce back game too. So kind of crushed their spirits with that one. Scotty, St. Louis again. We know John Gibson is the starter. We know Patrick Kane's going to be out again. And the lines for this game were interesting as well. I believe it was Appleton. I'm trying to pull it up real quick here. Don't have them handy. But I believe it was Appleton up on the second line with Casper and DeBrincat. And you also had Comfer with Berggren and Kopp. So bringing an interesting scoring touch to a line that traditionally has been mostly matchup-driven. And Rasmussen is centering JVR and Soderblom. What do you make of those lines, and what do you think of this game coming up?
I mean, as I've said before, I'm always down for. What are you doing?
Get comfortable. I'm letting you go.
You just want me to? I'll just take the rest of the show. You can just chill.
Go on.
Take
the reins.
I think. Wow. I hate you. Look at you. I hate this. I really am down for mixing and matching the lines as much as possible until you at least get Kane back, right? Like there's just so much when it comes to offensive production that you want to spread up and down the lineup. And now with MBN obviously gone, like there is plenty of different ways they can try and mix and match it. So I'm down for whatever. I have no qualms with, anything they want to try in that regard. I think the fourth line, I'm either going to love or never want to look at ever again. That is, and they're not going to get very many minutes, but like that's just a really interesting blend of size, but also veteran scoring. I'm interested too in if there gets to any point this year where JVR is, I don't know, conditioned enough or comfortable enough to play more than fourth line minutes. Cause like we could really use that type of production in a top 9 role. I'm just not sure if that's feasible. Like every game that goes by, I'm just less and less convinced that that's like ever going to come at this point.
Yeah, with JVR, it's interesting too because he is another one of those guys who's just so slow as he's like in his later years. So I don't know if he'll ever have the foot speed to really hang with the top 9. And that's kind of like what that was the first thing that stood out to me too when I looked at these lines. I'm like, Berggren with Compher and Kopp is kind of odd because Kopp and Compher, when together, have been part of a matchup line that's put out there in pretty heavy defensive minutes and has to grind down opponents. Berggren doesn't fit that style. That's not Berggren's game. So my first instinct is like, okay, you can't do Rasmussen because then you don't have enough centers. So JVR, because JVR would match that heavy style of game they want to play. He's another guy who gets to the net very hard. But then I'm like, yeah, but that line is already so slow. And so maybe that is why Berggren is with them, is to add a scoring touch and to also add some speed. He's not the fastest skater in the world, but he's a heck of a lot faster, in my opinion, than Kopp is, and faster than Compher as well. So I think that might be the idea there, at least in my speculation, because JVR, as much as he aligns with that line's identity, he just also aligns with that line's lack of foot speed, and you don't need a line that is always chasing the puck.
Sure.
So as far as the top line, I'm glad Raymond's back with Larkin. I think Raymond's very capable of playing well on other lines, but obviously they maximize each other's potential when they're together. Finney's been great. They're going to just have a rotation of second liners as long as Kane is out. And I think that immediately is kind of a red flag to the Red Wings fans about the lack of actual depth. Like you don't really have anyone to step up and take a top 6 role. We kind of knew that going into the season, right? Like we were already fishing for a top line left wing, and thank God Emmett Finney popped off. But Kane went down, and now you're like, oh, God, it's Mason Appleton on the second line. And I like Appleton. That's not a shot at Appleton, but he's not a top 6 forward. He's very good bottom 6 forward who would probably do really well on that third line, come to think of it. But who else are you going to put there? Like, you're going to put Berggren there? I mean, you're supposing him. Actually, Berggren might not be back because they get pretty good offensive deployments. Anyways, I'm kind of just going off on it. I don't think Berggren's a top 6.
Convinced himself.
Berggren's not a top 6 forward, in my opinion. But the identity of that line gets a lot of offensive zone deployments, and he is a offense first player. Patrick Kane is an offense first player. They're not anywhere in the same realm of talent, but I mean, it's just, I think it's because it's 2 shooters on the same line. You need a little bit of a playmaker, and so maybe they're hoping Appleton with his just very back and forth play style can match that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm thinking out loud. This is probably all things that Todd McCullough is going through too, but probably at a higher IQ level because he's an NHL head coach. Scotty, save me. I'm rambling.
Thanks for clarifying the McClellan higher IQ than you. Yeah.
I'm rambling here. Save me, buddy. What else you got for this game?
So, I mean, really the biggest thing is, and you kind of talked about it there at the beginning of the segment, right, is St. Louis has just allowed 1 billion goals this year. They are, I believe, second to last. I think they're 31st in the NHL just in goals allowed a game. And that's obviously been a huge problem. They allowed 7 the game before the Wings, and then the Wings put 6 in, a period and a half on them. And on top of that, this is a Blues team that will be in the second game of a back-to-back, and the back-to-back is not both at home. They literally, this is going into this game, this will be their last 4 calendar days, okay? They have The Wings at home. Obviously, that game already happened. They lost 6-4. Day off on Sunday. Pittsburgh at home. Detroit on the road? No. Other way around. I flipped the home and road. Regardless.
I know you.
Yeah. You get the point. Detroit on the road. That one was at LCA. Sunday, day off. Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. And then Detroit at home. So they have 3 games in 4 days. It's the second game of a back-to-back, and it's their first home game in almost a week. The scene is set for the Wings to take advantage here and win both games of this home and home.
Yeah, and the Red Wings, on the other hand, have had 2 days off to ready themselves for this road trip.
Rest or rust, dude.
You brought up a good point. The St. Louis Blues rank 31st in the league at 5-on-5 goals against at 24. But tied with them at 31st in the league is the Detroit Red Wings with 24 5-on-5 goals against. So
there you go.
St. Louis Blues get scored on a lot, but so do the Detroit Red Wings. And so far, the Detroit Red Wings have been able to, limit those goals against to big blowout losses, right? You think Montreal, you have the Islanders. They overcame what was looking to be a blowout this last game. You can't bank on that happening too many times.
Right.
Buffalo's another one where they gave up a handful of goals. So limiting those massive goals against to blowout losses where you don't play your game is, I don't want to say ideal, but better than consistently giving up 4 or 5 goals every single game. So yeah, it's just it's in every statistical category. These teams are pretty similar, right? You think about their shot attempts, right? Their Corsi for percentage. The Red Wings are listed at 9th in the league at 5-on-5 shot attempts, which is a huge improvement from last season. Well, the St. Louis Blues are 10th in the league. You go to expected goals percentage, right? Red Wings are ranked at 14th. And the St. Have Blues here actually have a huge advantage. They're second in the league expected goals for percentage. So it's a team that should be doing better than they are if you have faith in expected goals. But they are currently a game below 500 via points percentage. So it's a team you obviously know the Red Wings can beat. We will see if they do. Big start to a road trip. It'd be nice to start it off with 2 points. Scotty, any final thoughts for the people?
We ball, baby.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow recapping this game against the St. Louis Blues. Stay tuned for that. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.